Welcome to Coaching While Black, a CHJS podcast. I'm your host, Chris Reed. I'm joined by my co-host,
Anthony Andino. What's up?
Armond Richards. Hello.
And today we are talking about Trailblazers. We're in our Trailblazer season, and we have a Trailblazer that's going to join us that is near and dear to our heart. She is also a part of our family here at CHJS, Angela Hucles Mangano. She is the general manager at Angel City. Angela, welcome.
Thank you so much, Chris, Anthony, Armond. It's great to see you all. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming through. So we're just going to shower you with a lot of praise and love today. So just receive it all, answer some questions for us, if that's okay with you. So I'm going to start. I actually looked at your LinkedIn and just got exhausted, like just going through all that you do, all that you've done in your list of accomplishments. So if you could, for the crowd, just give everybody your background, like what you do now and how you got there. Let's start with your journey and just who Angela is so that the people know, so that when we celebrate you, it's felt.
Chris, is that a code word for just saying I'm old now?
Shots fired.
This has been, I think it's a journey, right? We all have our stories, and I think it's incredible to have an opportunity to share and learn and hear about everyone's story. Mine is rooted in sport.
Yeah.
And I think I would say sport and education, and that combination has really been, when I look back from the beginning of time to where I am now and that timeline, I think that has been consistent since I was itty bitty. And I've learned so much through sport, and I think it has been part of my education, part of my growth, both personal and professional, and has given me a variety of opportunities. And so what I do today as well as general manager of Angel City is I wear a lot of different hats. I think my background has been very eclectic professionally with what I've done, and I think it serves me very well for what I do today because of the diversity of what I do day to day. One thing looks very different in the morning than it does at the end of the day in terms of my responsibilities and my roles, but all rooted with sport, with education, and I'd say advancement. Really, I think very purposeful in terms of how I've really selected the things that I get involved in and support and am really passionate about. So I think that journey has been very rewarding to me because I've been able to blend so many passions and loves, and been really inclusive with having my family be very involved at a very early age and supporting me to really what I get to do today.
Now, you are a woman of color and you have done so much in the world of sport. Talk to us about what it has been like for you to be a woman of color and to continue to succeed, continue to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. You have some heavy accolades on your list of things that you've done, including being a general manager of the hottest ticket in Los Angeles right now. So just talk to us about your journey as a woman of color and what that has been for you. And if you have a message for other young women who are starting their journey out or want to start a journey in sport, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think it's unique to be a woman of color, especially in the sport of soccer or football, the global term for it, because there really have not been a whole lot of people who've looked like me, even from the beginning. When I first started playing the sport, I was one of the only, if not very few, people of color, and also played with all boys. So both racial and gender differences very, very early on. So I was always different. And physically different. It would, things that, you could not hide. So I always stood out and had to understand and learn what that meant. And I think it was different at different stages of my life. And I think for me to also sit in the position that I am now, I never had an opportunity to look at a role model who was a woman of color as a general manager. That just did not exist in professional sports, did not exist in women's soccer. So really being able to navigate and achieve things that didn't really exist or have an opportunity to look up to. So I think part of where I've started to get to now is really interesting because I think a lot of women of color, people of color, will remember being told, you have to work twice as hard,
yep.
to get and to achieve success in this world, given, the racial dynamics. And what I'm trying to do now is change that narrative and not have that be my story, not have to say that, yes, you absolutely have to work twice as hard, but you can show up as you are and put in the work that you would, regardless of race, and still achieve. And I think that's a hard one that I've been working on to shift, but I think part of being and holding the space and being representative of is something that I'm really proud of, and want to do things like this to show representation, because that does matter, and I think a lot of times we do need to see it to achieve it and to believe it, and so it's not always the case that you can start to create things that just don't exist until you've had someone to help support or model or show you that pathway. So I think that's part of what is my other work and my other job too, that I proudly hold and serve, is to be a model and to serve as a representation of what can be.
I love that. Having that responsibility of paving the way for the next group.
Angela, I once saw a YouTube TED Talk on why we need more introverted leaders. And I was wondering if you could speak to how that, because I myself am a proclaimed introvert, and only recently have I found a lot of stuff out there that says, hey, you guys are still cool in this world, you know what I mean? And one of those things was the talk that you gave. And so I was wondering how that might have helped you in the career that you are, in your life growing up. Anything you can say to somebody like myself who doesn't feel like being at the front of a company or sports team is not for somebody with my kind of temperament?
It's really interesting. If you have not done a TED Talk or TEDx Talk, I highly recommend it. It was a very interesting process going through of, creating what that story would be and how that would look, and what message I really wanted to get across. Because, as an introvert myself, and I believe all of us have leadership skills and capabilities, and it's what we choose to do with that and how we show up. But we live in a primarily extroverted space and world where the recognition or the acknowledgement or how things should be tend to be in an extroverted space. I like to process things before I make a decision, but I need to, for the most part, adapt to making decisions quickly, right? Not have everyone else around me adapt to, let's take a moment, let's take a beat, and let's let people who need to process and take a little bit more time before making decisions have that freedom and space. And what I found, especially now in a management position and really building culture and recognizing differences and how you bring those together, and having representation of diversity is where I found to be the most important. It's not about having a certain style as an extrovert or as an introvert, but it's how we all come together and have a space in which we can all operate and perform, at our unique and in our own capacities. I think is really important. So that's been probably one of the biggest things that I've learned. And there are many ways that you can achieve success and that you can achieve things together. One simple example, my 3.5-year-old daughter, the other day, she's very independent, and she wanted to get dressed by herself, and I was trying to help her put her shirt on because she had it backwards. And she's like, no, mommy, no. Like, I can do this. And so she had the shirt on, put it over her head backwards. And as she was putting it over her head, she twisted the shirt to put it front ways, right? And so the same outcome that, I was trying to help her with, but she had her own way of doing it, right? So I think, in those little simple examples, just showing how there are, many ways of doing things. And the more that we can respect each other and learn from each other and grow together, it makes it more fun when you achieve those success milestones too.
Angela, again, thank you for being here. As you know, with our background and the work that you've done around CHJS and the team of individuals that we've been blessed to work with, we praise heavily neuroscience and, putting the athlete experience first and mental health in sports. And the higher you get in sports, that kind of gets seen as soft and not as commonplace. How does that live within the culture at Angel City, and how is it showing up?
I think it's perhaps even more important once you're in these environments, because there tend to be higher stakes, more pressure, more stress that people experience. And so what that does to you physically, psychologically, physiologically becomes heightened. And I think you need to spend even more attention and awareness on it. It absolutely shows up in our work environment in terms of, how we show up, how we communicate, when we are in fight or flight, and what that state is, especially when you have to make decisions from, a staff member to a player on the pitch. And so we actually did some work early as a staff. The very first thing we did this year when we reported together before our preseason started, before the players reported back in, was a staff workshop with a mental performance coach, and getting guidance and how we would provide feedback and receive feedback to one another, right? How we would communicate, how we can look at these opportunities for growth and not as criticism. And I think by starting out with a little bit more of a plan and a roadmap of what we're trying to achieve, it helps us in those times when things do become more stressful, we have tools that we can fall back on and use, and also recognize when we're in these different states, right? Because, being able to communicate effectively and work through and get to a resolution when someone is not ready to hear that, being able to understand in that moment what is the best time and what is the best method of communication. So I think being aware, first and foremost, that these things do exist and they're very real and normal human elements to navigate through, I think is step one. And what are the tools that we can use both individually, right? How we can also recognize our own states and when we're in the best optimal time for making good decisions and talking through things, and then how we do that with one another. I think all of that goes into part of a culture and how we live and do work on a daily basis.
Now, Angela, you were a member of the U.S. Women's National Team. You also have played professional, and now you are running a team. Talk us through your soccer experience or your football experience, and where you see yourself and where you see the sport and the league going between now and forever.
Forever. I love it. What's so interesting is that things are changing and evolving so rapidly right now in the women's game, from the play on the pitch to the business aspects of it, to valuations of clubs, to valuations of players and their contracts, to the transfer fees that are being paid. It's like every 3 months, every 6 months, things are moving that quickly and shifting. So, we're talking today about one thing in one state of the professional women's game, both domestically and globally. But that's going to shift and change probably in 6 months again, and so we could sit here now and come back in a year, and it could be, maybe not outwardly so different, but really different in terms of new interest in the league. We just had new media rights with NWSL across a few different media platforms to really kind of mirror NFL football, and where you can show up and watch these games, but there's more visibility, more opportunity to see these players and these professional athletes perform their craft. There's a high level of interest right now in investing in women's sports and understanding that it is an investment, right? And it's not, where in the past people would consider this more charity work. So I think people are seeing this as a real business, and I think it's attracting a new demographic of fans as well as new demographic of ownership. And the sport's growing. There's been an announcement of a new first tier division league in the USL for the women's domestically here in the United States. So there is a larger pool of players that are just better and have more opportunities for these players to play. So it looks completely different than when I started playing, as a 7-year-old with pigtails and loving the orange slices at halftime. And, now we actually have, people like myself holding, positions of administration and running clubs. And so I think it's opened up opportunities for players, current and past, as well as, open up more opportunities for women, especially in the women's game. And I think, that growth is also what's driving the business case for why people are investing right now in women's sports.
So you just brought up being 7, having pigtails, playing the sport that you love, being passionate about it, and now you are running a team. Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, think that this was something that was possible, or was this a goal, something that you wrote down on a napkin years ago and you executed? How did this come about?
Absolutely not. No. The short and honest answer. Even as recently as to stepping into the role, it was that recent. I never really saw this as something that I would go into. Now that I'm in it, it makes sense. But, even a few years ago, it wasn't something that was even on my radar. And, I think it goes into what I just said about the opportunities that now do exist. I think a large part of it also is how Angel City started as well, in terms of being able to provide opportunities that didn't exist before, and how we are, navigating and trying to lead with passion and purpose, and show up as a really purpose-driven club in a much different way. We have over 100 different investors in this club, which in the traditional model of sports investment, it's 1 or 2 majority owners, and that's it. And so I think providing more opportunities is really at the core of Angel City, and I think I've definitely benefited from that as well. But I think being able to now see these opportunities, now have other young girls, young boys see women of color in these types of positions will only heighten, and I think it's now attracting other opportunities and other ways of thinking of what could possibly exist, that these weren't even thoughts that I had as a young person.
Angela, as a trailblazer, right, a person who's done so much to kind of create a pathway for herself and other folks, who's a trailblazer that you look towards? Like, who's somebody that you look towards for for inspiration?
I think it changes kind of different stages of growth, right? Because hopefully as you've grown and developed, you have new things that you're trying to grow into and achieve. And I think I've always been very fortunate in having strong role model and figures in my family. I definitely have looked to my mother as a Black female who, in my mind, did it all. And something that I struggle with a little bit, actually, because I've come to this realization that I'm not supposed to do it all. And that's not necessarily realistic, but I think the way that she was a professional mother, a wife, and how she lived her life, I think is something that I've always looked to as wanting to model and try to model in my own life. And I think looking at some of the past figures, especially in sport, the person that I always kind of go to is Althea Gibson, who, Black female who definitely was a trailblazer in her day, and not just being exceptional at tennis and, really kind of fighting and trailblazing during a time that was more segregated, but then, being trying her hand at the LPGA tour as well, and being that dual athlete at a high level. I think being able to do things in a time where people are telling you can't, and that something doesn't exist, I think is always a great reminder of being able to create your own reality. And so people like that are the ones that I really do look to, because some of the things that we're trying to do are really shifting the narrative of how women can live in society that just has not been allowed before. So I think doing that through the power and the incredible power of sport is one of the ways that I think has always been most inspiring and rewarding for me.
What advice, as your girls are growing up and probably will want to play sports as well, and my girls are getting to an age where I'm getting ready to put them in sports, what advice would you give to like a young parent who's putting their girl into sports, as well as to like a young girl who is wanting to achieve something as great as Angela Hucles achieved?
You know, I think it's always, and it's another reminder of what I'm trying to do right now in my own life, it's important to have fun with what you're doing. I think we as adults don't emphasize enough the power of play. I know the work that you all do, that is a large component of it as well. And I always enjoyed playing this sport. And it was when it didn't become, or wasn't as fun anymore, is when I actually retired. And I can honestly say that from, the time I started until the time I stopped playing, I enjoyed it. It didn't mean I had fun every single day, but I always enjoyed it, right? And part of enjoyment is the struggle, is the work. So I think being able to do that, and the advice I would have is just to find that thing or those things that you enjoy and that you're passionate about and that you feel like you can commit to. I think there's something really exciting, fun. Again, when I think about sport and education, right, that personal growth, something that is challenging, but that, you want to show up and commit to working through those challenges as well. When you find that thing, stick with it and give it some time to see how that plays out. And as a parent, and expose your children to those opportunities when you can and where you can, because, it's not about getting your child into sport as early as possible to get a scholarship at college. We know the statistics on that are not very high for that to happen and or to become a professional athlete. It's about what the benefits are of getting your children into physical activity, the physical, the mental aspects and the benefits of that. So I'm always a proponent. My son right now, we try to get him involved in soccer at 5 years old, and he was crying. He was like, every single week, we try to do a little more. Okay, we hold his hand to get him on the field, and then he was okay. But, it's not for everyone, or, one specific sport is not for everyone. And it's more about that journey and that process and, exposing to different opportunities that your children do enjoy.
Now, being somebody who comes from our line of work, you understand the benefits of sport and sport for good and how it impacts the community. And Angel City does a lot of community work. I mean, foundational community work. How is community weaved into what you do every day and what you, as a team, you all do every day?
Yeah, I think it's really at the foundation of, as you said, our club, what we do. Probably the biggest reason I went from, and actually my entryway into Angel City was as an investor with my former U.S. Women's National Team players and teammates, and we invested together in Angel City. And that point from investor to actually an employee of the club was because I attended the very first community event that the club held. And I went out there. It was, providing some soccer balls and, a couple of different books and equipment for some of the children in the community. And that interaction and that presence of Angel City saying, this is what's important to us, and this is how we're starting out with connecting and building a club, is the recognition of our community because we can support one another. And I think that has been integral at the core of our values as a club. And it's exactly how, we're building out our club on the soccer side as well, in terms of our staff. That community of our staff has to be solid and good in order to show up and support our players and provide them with what they need. And the same thing with the culture of our players, right? In terms of how they show up and on, the daily, how they interact with each other and how they support one another through the good and the tough times, because ultimately all of those things tie into how we will achieve together, how we will be successful, how we will be on the same page, having the same vision with clarity and understanding that especially in the adversity, that's when we need to show up for one another. That's when we need to understand how we communicate. That's when we need to really rely on what we've built as a community and the importance on that. And we can feel it on game days, when we show up at BMO Stadium and the fans are there, and it does not feel like a group of people who are just there for the first time. It feels like a group of people who have been there and have always been there and will always be there. And I think that's the difference between what makes a fan in sport and an Angel City community fan. And it's palpable. Like, the players feel it. We can all feel it when you go into that stadium on game day. It's incredible.
I'm a big fan of giving advice. And let's say you had a magic time machine and you can go talk to Angela right when she was starting out. What piece of advice would you give young Angela?
Oh my goodness. That time machine is going way back now. Let me think. I think, it's definitely the have fun piece. Always have fun, but have fun knowing that it's not going to always be easy and enjoyable. And when someone is telling you that you can't do something, that's when you double down. If that's something that you really want and you can do, and someone's telling you, no, you can't do it, that's when you need to really reach within yourself and find the strength and double down, and or get the support around you and the people that will say yes to help you achieve that goal. So I would say that the have fun and don't let the no stop you.
And I like that, because the difference between fun, I feel like a lot of people conflate easy with that.
Yeah.
That's true. Ease and convenience should be a part of fun, but sweetness after difficulty, that's when things are harder and you succeed. It's nothing like that. There's absolutely nothing like that.
So, Angela, we wanted to take this time just to elevate you and talk about all the great things that you've done and just how great you are as a human being, as an athlete, as a mom, as a general manager, as a business pioneer. You've done a lot. I won't say you've done it all, but you've done a lot, and it's all been great. And we just want to give you your flowers and say thank you for all that you've done for your sport, all that you've done for the city of Los Angeles, all that you've done for your family and other young women of color around the country. And we hope that you can be a beacon of light to them as time goes on, especially if they want to continue in playing soccer. Any last words for Angela, guys?
Not just young women of color, too. When I first met you, I knew you were somebody to admire. So, you have been an inspiration to, I'm sure, every one of us on the couch and those in the background.
Thank you. Appreciate all those sentiments, and open invitation anytime you all want to get out to a game. Would love to have you there. And thank you for all that you do. I know the work that you all do.
Thank you.
It is critical to community sustainability, and for us to really be able to come together and navigate this incredible world and journeys that we're each on. So thank you for all that you do as well.
Thank you. Before we go, is there any call to action or any social media handles or any websites that people should follow, or any way people can get to know more about you or more about what you do?
Thanks for asking. I think definitely come out to a game if you can. Support these female athletes and these professional women athletes. It's incredible what they do when you don't see them, on game days. And so, they deserve all the accolades and, honors that they do get and more. So please come out to a game, and you check out the weareangelcity.com website to get the schedule and more information. I don't really post a whole lot on social media, so nothing really to follow there, but, choose a player, I would say. Find a player that you can, learn more about and start to follow. Cause I think it's really fun when you get to show up at games and you kind of know a little bit more about, one of the players, and choosing one of your favorite pro sports teams.
I think the three of us are gonna pick our players and
roster it up real quick.
Start following today.
We're gonna get jerseys to come out.
Yep, we're gonna come out.
Yes.
We're gonna come out.
We'll get you on the Jumbotron.
Yeah.
Well, Angela, we just want to say thank you, not only for today, but for everything that you do. It's been amazing to have a conversation with you and to see you again. For those at home, please follow up with Angel City. Follow a player, follow the team, support the team, buy a kit or two. For us, this is a CHJS Coaching While Black episode. Peace.
Peace.